guys to listen to a little sound bite that I found rather interesting. Throughout tonight's show, I'm going to be, having you guys to listen to sound bites so that you don't take my word for it, but you'll get it directly from a horse's mouth. I'm sure you are all aware by now that there is an impeachment going on of President Trump, who is out of office. But of course, the Democrats want to go forward with the impeachment and saying that the president did incite a riot source that took place on January 6th on the Capitol. Now, if that is true, if we're to believe that, I think that we should go back and look at the tape and look at all the Democrats who definitely have been inciting riots, violence since 2016. Again, don't take my word for it. We have them saying it themselves. So I will be playing that tape. But the tape that I want to play first off is a tape from now President Joe Biden. If you recall, during the campaign season, he said a lot of stuff, and politicians do, just to get elected. But one of the things that he was adamant about was how he attacked President Trump for, governing, as he said, by executive order. And this is day 8th of the Biden presidency. And I think so far he has instituted almost like about 40 executive orders. And this was him then during the campaign on his position on executive orders. So take a listen to it, and we'll discuss it later on.
If you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
So, you tell me what you think about that. Executive orders and now President Biden. So, without further ado, let me introduce my panel. Of course, my host at Small Town Andrew. How's it going, Andrew?
It's going good.
And our journalist guest today, Heather Robinson. How's it going, Heather?
Hey, fellas. Fine. How are you?
Good, good. And of course, we have a subject matter expert who's worked on a couple of things, attorney Manny Alejandro, who has been on the show before. Manny, how's it going? Manny, I don't think your sound is on. We can't hear you.
It's not good here.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Okay, there we go.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so guys, I want to just jump right into it. I want to start off first with the video that I played with Joe Biden and his executive orders, saying that you can't govern by executive orders as something for dictatorships. But now it seems, now that he's in office, he has issued over 40 plus executive orders. The tape speaks for itself. And needless to say, the media, thinking nothing of it, think that it's grand, I guess. It's groovy, it's great. And some of those executive orders have directly impacted a lot of people. In the oil and energy, he has laid off so far, or added to the unemployment number, 11,000 workers and counting. Not good. Not good at all. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that a lot of people, yes, will be out of work. And I know energy is a very complicated set of issues, but if I'm not mistaken, during the Trump years, I believe this country became energy independent to the extent that we were not needing to rely on other nations as much anyway for our oil and gas. And unfortunately, I guess that's going to change soon. And I also imagine the price of gas is going up big time pretty soon, no?
Yep, pretty soon it will be.
Yeah, it's already up 20 cents here.
So
I'm going to have to start pitching in for, I've been getting some rides lately. I'm in Pittsburgh and, I seriously, yeah, I don't really know what gas costs because I don't own a car, but I know it's a big, big issue for many, many, many Americans.
Yeah. I just find it interesting. Again, as I said in the opening, a lot of people that are running for president, a lot of the candidates, make promises that they're not going to keep. But this soon, his presidency, he's already using executive orders like 40 plus to govern. The whole thing with the Paris Climate Accord, the WHO, Obamacare, abortion, funding abortion overseas. That I don't get. I don't quite understand it. I've got to do some more research. But I'm like, why are we funding abortions overseas? I don't even understand why we're doing it here, and why government businesses that the government does business with, why they're participating in this. But overseas, I mean, what countries? Well, I know the countries, Africa. I don't get it. And quiet is kept. And a lot of people don't know this, but the media is not going to say anything about it. They're going to keep mum on it because for them and to them, well, this is no biggie, no big deal. But just the irony of what's happening now, that he's sitting at a table every day and he's just governing by executive orders because I guess he knows that, hey, it's going to be hell and high water to get anything accomplished. Now, to be fair, Trump did the same thing in some instances, but it benefited the country a great deal. What's unfortunate is that when you do govern by executive orders, once you're out of office, the next person who comes in can change it. So, you always want to try to make laws, but, it's just amazing, again, how he is doing this. Andrew, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. It seems like the Democrats are just being vengeful here and trying to undo everything that President Trump did just because of who did it. Like this Keystone Pipeline, it just makes no sense why they would cancel it. Even the far left Canadian government is against canceling the pipeline because they think it's more energy efficient to send the oil through the pipeline than shipping it through trucks and train and boats. So it just doesn't make sense, and it's not adding up, except they're trying to erase everything that President Trump did.
And believe it or not, Max, the New York Times has even said, slow down on the executive orders, Mr. President. What are you doing here? What are your thoughts, Manny?
Look, at the end of the day, I just don't think it matters, right? I think that I saw this political cartoon. I love political cartoons ever since I was a kid because, you could stare at them and they really have a ton of information in them. And I saw this cartoon of this giant pencil eraser, the pink pencil eraser. It's huge, and it's Biden and Harris next to the pencil eraser, and it's pushing Trump, and Trump is running away from the eraser. And that's exactly, what Andrew said, is that all these executive orders are just, if Trump did this, we're going to undo it with this executive order. If Trump didn't do this, we're going to do it with this executive order. And it's just fast and furious. He has a stack at the desk and he doesn't even know what the hell he's signing. He's just signing them, and it's just, coming at him, like on an assembly line, but it's ridiculous because we live in just such a messed up world right now. And we're not thinking through the fact that our economy is shaky and that the last thing in the world you want to do is tinker with some kind of Green New Deal or something with clean energy right now. That's something you do when things are stable and okay. So you don't want to lose all these jobs by cutting back in terms of oil exploration, Keystone Pipeline, and all that. Worst time to do that. You don't want to raise minimum wage when a recession is to $15 an hour, when a recession is looming, right? It's just like the worst time to do it. Those are the things you do when things are okay because they have like a negative impact on the economy. So if you're in a situation where the economy is somewhat wonky because everything we're going through with COVID, there's so much unemployment, so many people are freaking out about not being able to go to work because things are still closed down. Their jobs are deemed non-essential, which is just a terrible thing to say anyway. They work for non-essential business. I mean, talking about demoralization, or trying to just treat Americans unfairly, doing the stuff he wants to do. I think he could wait, right? I mean, he's in office for a week. He could wait to see how we recover, if we fully recover from COVID and the economy starts to improve with people going back to work. I'm not talking about Wall Street. I'm talking about Main Street. So his timing is just way off. And it's just literally, I'm in and I'm going to undo anything and everything to do with Trump and just put Biden's name on it. That's the impression I get.
And like you said, why is he doing it so quickly? I mean, why can't he wait just to take a temperature check and just to see how the economy is doing, kick the tires? I mean, we see now that it is the economy grew, it has shrunk, if anything. But yet and still he's going full speed ahead, and it makes you think that there's a degree of vengefulness that's there. And I often think about, when Trump came into office, he could have very easily gone after Hillary Clinton. And in my opinion, he legally could have and said, we want to see what happened. Because now we know that this whole Russian dossier was fake. We want to look at you and what happened with your emails, because you of all people knew that you weren't supposed to use a private server. And not only that, Barack Obama claimed that he didn't know, but he did know. So Trump could have gone after her and could have justified it. Now, people wouldn't have liked it, but it just shows you, that he said, no, these are nice people. I don't want to go after them. But the tables are turned, and it's like, we don't care. We want to erase you from history. We want to, completely obliterate everything that you've done. We're just going to blow it up. Who cares who's hurt? Who cares who's harmed? And you have these people who are out there talking on his behalf, like John Kerry. I mean, of all people, he's going to be the guardian of the climate, and he's riding around a Gulfstream jet. You have Janet Yellen, who's going to be the Secretary of Treasury, and she's benefiting from a lot of the folks at Wall Street. You have another person who's coming in from California, and she messed up the entire thing with unemployment. But these are things that the media isn't telling us. They're not saying anything about it. It is as if though his entire staff, they're pristine, that there's no wrong. Now, one thing I will give to them is that quiet as it is kept, there are no leaks so far. Whereas when Trump went into the office the very first day, there were leaks all over the place. And I think as one of our guests said, Andrew, Michael Johns, is that the people that Trump had in place, they weren't really there for him. They were just there for themselves. But Biden's administration, complete silence. There's nothing that's getting out. It's amazing. So I will give them that. But the people that he's putting in these places, these key positions, not good at all. Not good. Do you guys have any comments on those people before we move on to our next subject, which is the economy?
Just basically, if you guys notice the difference in the press briefings and just the hostility of the press towards Joe Biden's press secretary, Psaki, I can't pronounce her name, but it's just night and day, the difference between
sake, like a little too much sake at the sushi restaurant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the hostility. It's just night and day. And she'll dodge an answer and they won't press her on it, things like that. Just totally different.
I saw Biden himself a few days ago saying, we can't change the course of the trajectory of this pandemic for the next few months, So, I mean, can you imagine for a minute if President Trump had said that? There's really nothing we can do to change the basic course of this thing. I mean, they would have been screaming bloody murder. He doesn't care, all the deaths, the no compassion, the evil. But, I guess it was an acknowledgement. Frankly, even though, as you guys know, I'm not one to believe that the virus can be 1,000% controlled through mitigation, regardless of what you do. I mean, even I would not have gone that far and say, oh, there's nothing, we can't control the trajectory of this. So, I mean, it was like an admission. What I tweeted is, it's a good thing President Trump didn't think that way before he launched Operation Warp Speed, that there's really nothing much we can do. So I didn't hear any pushback on the president for that comment.
Well, yeah, I call her the circle back girl because she's always, I'll circle back with you. We'll do this. And I mean, I'm not trying to attack her or anything, but in a way, I am trying to point out the differences, as Andrew said, the differences in the press conferences. And when it was Trump, everything was about him. What did he do and why did he do this? As
Why
opposed
did
to
he say
asking,
this?
right, as opposed to
Everything
asking
perfect.
legitimate questions as to the economy and what was going on. Now, granted, I think a lot of times, Trump was the center of attention. You have this person larger than life, he's there. So they weren't necessarily focusing on the economy when the economy was doing extremely well. It's like it was, but they didn't want people to know that. So they were busy covering the leaks. Someone told us this, someone told us that, things that were completely irrelevant to the economy.
They were obsessed with taking Trump down, and anything he said that was imperfect was parsed and spun and made much of. And in this case, the media wants to help Biden, and maybe to a fault. They're not approaching as a critical media at all, which is what I expected.
Yeah.
Listen, I think this whole thing is interesting, in terms of his cabinet picks, the way he handles press conferences and his press secretary. And I think it's all great to run a candidate in 2024. I mean, this stuff is tremendous for us. I mean, look, we have so much already to attack, and he's been in office for a week. Imagine in a couple of years, if he makes it. If not, if he doesn't resign or whatever, and we have President Kamala Harris. But I mean, I think this stuff is fantastic, right? I mean, he's inherited a really, really difficult job right now, right? I mean, there's going to be a lot more people that die from COVID. We're going to have 500,000 people sadly dead of COVID, within the next week or so. I mean, we don't even hear about it, but you have 6,000 or 7,000 people dying from COVID a day. And CNN used to have that ticker on the bottom. They don't even, have anymore. And the virus is the worst it's ever been. I mean, there's places like in California completely locked down, and New York's locked down still, but Florida's open and Nebraska's open and South Dakota's open. So it's really weird in terms of the fact that, we're getting to the tipping point as far as I'm concerned, in terms of if we don't open things up, people are getting really frustrated. People will move from being unemployed to unemployable. Okay. And, maybe if there was 100 restaurants that were open, hypothetically, just use an example, and they closed for COVID, or they just open for takeout or outdoor dining, which we're having this cold blizzard on the Northeast here, really across the country. How are you going to eat outside? It's like 5 degrees outside. It's silly. Maybe you'll never have 100 restaurants reopen, and nobody talks about this, but the people that work in those restaurants, they might not have the technical skills to go work for Google and be an engineer, right? And that's just the way it is. Now there's 80 restaurants. So you have people who worked at the 100 restaurants competing against each other for those same jobs. I mean, we're not solving the problems. We're not solving the problems of what's going to happen when the moratorium on evictions lapses. A bunch of people are not going to pay their rent. And then what's going to happen? A bunch of landlords are not going to be able to pay their mortgage. And then what's going to happen? There's going to be a problem with the banks, because the banks are going to have to write down those loans. So we're going to have potentially another huge financial crisis like we had in 2008 and 2009, which nobody's talking about. So, we could keep playing these games, and Biden can wear the mask at the Oval Office desk and sign the executive orders. But the real problems are what I just said. And it's obvious, anybody who knows anything about government and reality and how things work, we're just pushing off the days of reckoning. They will be here shortly, in the spring, in the summer, and things aren't looking good. There's no plans that I'm hearing of getting us out of this. So a stimulus package, a relief package, is just a short-term relief. If you have a failed business and someone gives you like $10,000, that might get you through another couple of weeks. But if you don't have any austerity measures, like in New York, right? If New York gets some kind of bailout, so what? They haven't laid one person off in New York, right? The tax base is eroding because people are wanting out of New York. Taxpayers are gone, and the other big cities. And guess what? The city and the state provide more services now than they did in the past because of COVID. So government expenditures going up, tax base decreasing because people are leaving and less people can work. So it's a terrible situation. And I'm not hearing any solutions from anybody in the states or in the federal government. So, it is going to be bad. It is looking bad, not from a COVID perspective, but from an economic perspective. Biden's not the guy to come up with a solution. He's just not, and he's not gonna.
Well, those are good points. And why do you think no one is talking about it? Because, like you said, I mean, what he's saying right now, just on the surface, but long term, I mean, New York yet to open up, and they're still like pussyfooting around with the restaurants. Cuomo saying, "Well, we'll have a plan tomorrow," but when people can't pay the mortgage, they can't pay the rent. What happens?
It's just like kicking a can down the street. It's like you're like shifting around who has the risk. But at the end of the day, someone's going to have to absorb that risk and recognize it on their financial statements or write it off or something. Like if you don't pay rent since March of 2020, and now we're heading into February of 2021, how's that going to ever be resolved? Someone's going to have to ultimately accept that loss.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's going to be, we the people, the taxpayers. This is going to be another form of a bailout. The banks, are they too big to fail again? The banks gave all these loans out, and two different companies, right? They extend mortgages and stuff, but people don't pay rent. Then what's going to happen to those mortgages? And then it's going to all hit us again, and we're not talking about it. We're assuming there's going to be a miraculous recovery of the economy. What's interesting too, is if you study habits, like you read Malcolm Gladwell, people develop habits in like 28 days. So I know, like, I live my life differently right now. Like I used to go to the dry cleaners all the time and get my shirts. I used to wear a fresh white shirt every day. Now I have a frumpy, hoodie on all the time, or a t-shirt, right? I never did that. I always wear a white shirt, a tie, and a suit. I don't go to my dry cleaners anymore. I don't go get a cup of coffee the way I used to. I don't meet people for lunch. I'm not sure if I ever will. I'd like to, but we get used to the way we live. And, that happens in 28 days. Multiply that by 11 months. Multiply that by a year. What am I going to do? I don't need to wear a shirt or a suit. Maybe I could maybe I could have done it for you guys. I'm sorry. Don't take offense that I didn't. But like seriously, like the poor dry cleaner. How do the dry cleaners stay in business? How does the coffee shop stay in business? How does absent like Walmart or Target or something? They're the ones who stay in business and it could absorb this. But the small businesses, people aren't going there anymore. People aren't driving to work or whatever. So 28 days, flatten the curve, 2 weeks or whatever it was, fine. 10, 11 months. I mean, I don't know if it's ever going to come back. I mean, are we going to be in this till 2025? I heard something the other day that we could be in this till 2025.
Wow. Maybe although, I mean, I hate to say that, maybe it was that, in office so that Biden could deal with this and then he could come back in 2024 and straighten all that out. You never know. But Manny, what are your thoughts on this? Because I think we've kicked this around a bit. What if, when this happened, had they put everything on freeze and just said, okay, everything we're going to freeze, payments and whatnot, we're going to freeze it and then start back up? Could that have been a possibility?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. I do a podcast on a platform, and one of the guys that has a show on that platform is from Australia. And he interviewed me last night. We did 2 segments. And in Australia, by comparison, they did the same thing that China did. They shut down. I mean, people were stuck in their houses, in their apartments for like 8 weeks to really flatten the curve. And it was effective in Australia because they have very few incidents of COVID. So they took their medicine up front. They took the pain up front. We seem to be spreading this out. And again, it's not working because the incidents in Florida, which is open, are not much higher that I'm aware of, if anything, than states like California where they're in complete lockdown. Right. So, to crush the economy and to make people suffer and experience depression and go through some horrible things, was it worth it? Is it worth it? Maybe, we should have just took the pain at one shot and shut down for a month. Maybe that would have been more effective. I think what we're doing right now, is it working? And then, look at, I have a story to tell. So I saw something on Twitter from Charlie Gasparino. Charlie's a great journalist. He's on Fox News, Fox Business, and he writes for the Post, sometimes in the Wall Street Journal. So what was going to happen was the traders were going to come back at the end of Q1. So assuming everybody else got vaccinated, the traders would be at the back of the line. First responders, retirees, teachers, they would get vaccinated. But because, Governor Cuomo, bumbled the vaccinations, they're extremely
Oh,
delayed. So
don't tell
now
him that.
now the Wall Street traders might not come back till Q4 of 2021. So wow, isn't that crazy? We just lost 3 quarters. So again, nobody's going to go to dry cleaner. No one's going to get a cup of coffee. No one's going to go get a beer after work because they're going to work remotely. They're still working. They're still making money. But the whole point was to bring them back to work, even in a scaled back basis. That's not going to happen because companies are not. The thing Biden could do is and the Democrats give companies relief from liability.
Yeah.
Right. But people going back to work, but they're not doing that. So companies like, okay, I won't let you come back to work unless you get tested and unless you get vaccinated, because I want to make sure that I have a plan in case someone gets sick or they die, God forbid, that I could, defend myself as a small business or even a large business, that I did the best I could do to have a safe work environment. And the government has not gotten involved with that, which is completely sad because they put the burden on the businesses.
Right. It's ridiculous. And now Biden is saying that if people decide, well, I don't want to go back to work because I might get sick, they don't have to go to work and then they can get unemployment. I'm like, why wouldn't they say, okay, we're going to absolve you of these companies? If someone comes in, if they get sick, just like me getting the flu, am I going to blame my place of employment? Oh, I got the flu because of you, because I was sitting next to Sally and she had it.
How do you prove it?
I can sue you.
How do you prove it? I mean, it's going to be crazy world. But again, this stuff could be, the way we're talking it through, all this stuff could be articulated and it could come up with some type of relief. That should be an executive order, but he's not doing it.
Right. And why aren't people doing it? Now, I admire the guy that Trump had in place. What was his name? His Secretary of Treasury. Oh gosh, he was
Steve Mnuchin.
Yeah, Mnuchin. I thought he was a very smart guy.
He is.
I'm like, no, why aren't they having maybe they were trying to have these conversations, but the Democrats, again, kept pushing back. No, we want people to be able to go to work and be able to sue. That was one of the big things in the package that they had. They wanted people to be able to sue if they went to work and got sick. And now Biden is saying, oh, don't go to work and you can get unemployment. It's like, are you serious?
It's always against. There's an assumption that, like, you're the boss, you have a business, you own a business, you own a building, or you're the landlord, that you're rich. You're the fat cat. So it's always this, like, us versus them.
Yep.
So we don't really care about the big business. Let them figure it out. We don't care about your boss. But no, your boss is employing you. Like, right. Of course we should be, we want to take care of your boss so you get off of unemployment and you could participate in the economy again. But no, so they're putting the burden on, large businesses and small businesses. That, imagine the liability like Goldman Sachs has, if they bring people back to work and people get sick. And oh my God, people will. And then you're going to see, lawyers haven't made a lot of money because the courts have been closed. So you see zealous lawyers bringing these wrongful death actions, or people got sick with COVID. I mean, it's going to be insane. And again, it's shifting the burden. The government, the Democrats of big government step up, have the government provide protections. And I'm not a big supporter of big government, but in this instance, right, we need the government. It could be temporary, but just help out. Nope. So now, you're seeing even employers, might be sued by employees who say, I don't want to take the vaccination. Can I be forced to take a vaccination? Yep. And that's going to be a novel case, right? If they say all of our employees are tested and all of our employees are vaccinated, come to our restaurant or come fly on our airline or whatever. I mean, can a company do that? I don't think they can with regard to a vaccination. They can now with testing, but it's a novel legal question. I'm sure people will sue and say I have a medical accommodation issue or a religious exemption issue where I can't get vaccinated. And then what happens? Do they get fired? I mean, all this stuff can be drawn up. I mean, this isn't rocket science. This is a lot of commonsensical stuff that I'm sure people in Congress know, but they just won't address it because they refuse to. Nancy Pelosi, she waited. She admitted that she would not move forward on the relief package while Trump was president. I mean, that was intentional. So she hurt American people from getting the stimulus check, from getting more unemployment, just so she could try to help affect Trump not win. And she stands behind that. She's proud of that.
Right. And the media is not challenging her. It's like, it's okay. Let's let her move forward. I'm thinking, are you serious? And to me, that is something that Republicans should be harping on nonstop. Find a way to bring it up in every conversation so that the American people will know. Granted, the media will silence it out. They won't play it, as they're doing now. But I'm like, where we are now, it's very dangerous. And this just shows you this was a plan all along. And this is the beginning of socialism. Because if everything is like flat, there's nothing being made, of course, the government has to come in and the government has to offer programs to help people out. Once the government does it, what will the Democrats do? Remember, the government did this, so you should vote for us. And they'll bring in more states like DC. DC would be one of the poorest states out there. The government would have to bail them out. And then they'll go get Puerto Rico. So this is part of their whole
They
plan.
control everything we do. So you got to understand now, all the schools in New York, they in addition to, New York City, they're open on a limited basis, a couple of days a week for children who want to go. Parents want them to go back in person. But the schools also give out meals. They give out 3 meals to people a day. So think about how which is great, right? But the government is controlling everything these people do because they're literally controlling what people eat. And if they give me a red apple or a banana or whatever, it's like I don't have free will to choose what the hell I want. Like I can't even pick. They actually give you a bag because of social distancing, like a prepared, like they give you the bag of food and you go away and you eat. It's like, wait a minute, you're going to give me toothpaste and a toothbrush, and you're going to give me Crest and I want Colgate. Like, what the hell is going on here? And it's just expanding and expanding, and then people won't do stuff without the government telling them what to do.
Yeah.
So
Rudy Giuliani used to write about that. Rudy Giuliani, who has been so smeared, as far as I'm concerned, a person with real credibility as a leader and a doer, turns New York City around despite a mountain of establishment liberal opposition and undermining in the 90s. And he used to talk about, you want government to provide a safety net. You don't want people, God forbid, starving in a rich country, but you don't want government to continue doing and doing and doing so much for people that people and communities lose the impetus and the motivation to do for themselves and for each other. He wrote about that too. Communities, families, first of all, neighbors, churches, synagogues, mosques. These are the institutions of a healthy society. And it's not just about, people think conservatism is just about up by your bootstraps and help yourself. It is, but it's also about help each other. And when government does too much, it's just such a basic principle. It's like we're all susceptible to that. It's not against any individual or group of people. We all, I'm staying with my mom, and I tell you what, I'm getting lazy. She does so much, and it's not a perfect analogy, but it's like you stop using those muscles, and it's hard to remember how to take care of yourself and what you have to do. And I think you're right. On a broad societal level, this is why too much government tends to be unhealthy for people and communities. And I think a lot of American communities have suffered a great deal for many decades with what started as good intentions, but has been very negative in a lot of ways. And it concerns me deeply that we are, on the one hand, people need some help. It's a crisis situation. I'm not against that, but I'm with you guys that I'm very concerned that once the government, if this becomes an ongoing, continuous kind of situation, the whole country, we're all going to be on the dole. It's not really good for any of us for that to become, a semi or permanent situation.
Yeah, it's really interesting. What I learned this, I don't remember where I learned it or when I learned it, but it's stuck with me and it's very vivid. It's kind of like socialism is akin to like if you break your arm, you put a cast on your arm because you really can't use your arm, right? Your arm isn't free flowing and you really can't use it the way you're supposed to because it's broken. But that cast is there to help your arm heal. But once your arm is healed, if you still keep that cast on, it encumbers your movement of your arm. You can't move your arm.
It's
So
atrophy.
the cast is not meant to be permanent. It's meant to be temporary. So everything we're talking about is not meant to be permanent because it's going to impede capital markets. It's going to impede entrepreneurship. It's going to impede free will and people living their lives and pursuing the American dream. So it's the cast on your arm, 10 years after your arm healed. You can't use that arm. I mean, imagine if you walk around with a cast. I mean, it's a great analogy, and that's what socialism is. It's multiple casts on your body, restricting your movement, restricting everything you do, and the cast is formed in a way that the government wants it to be. So maybe you could do something, but it's in a way the government wants you to do it. It's tragic, and I feel that government is taking advantage of people who are very vulnerable right now. People are very desperate right now, and they're desperate for a little bit of good news. They're desperate for any type of help. So they become more gullible, and then people are losing faith in themselves and being empowered and self-empowered to take care of themselves and their families and their communities. And people are becoming very emotional. That's great for these socialists. That's great because they could come right in and they could be, the parents patriae, they could be your daddy and your mommy, and they could tell you what to do and how to do it and tell you how to educate your kids and what your kids should learn and what you should eat and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, what do they know about anything? I mean, look at the Supreme Court decision. It was a great Thanksgiving gift, when Andrew Cuomo was limiting people in Jewish temples and Catholic churches to like 10 or 25. He's not a scientist. And even Dr. Fauci, can you tell me where they get 10 or 25 people? I mean, it's so arbitrary and make believe. Why not 11 people or 37 people? I mean, it's completely fake, but people believe it. You know why? Because Cuomo said so. Fauci said wear 2 masks. Now I should wear 2 masks. I mean, is he going to say, wear 6 masks and then someone's going to just wrap their head in like cellophane or something? I mean, this stuff is becoming unbelievable. It's becoming so stupid, and people are becoming so gullible. Like, why don't you say, why do I need to wear 2 masks? Why isn't one enough? If one isn't enough, that means that one isn't working or it's not an adequate mask.
And
nobody's even questioning it. Nobody's like people. I've seen people wearing 2 masks now.
Right. And the media, they're not going to say anything about it. People are just like following around like sheep. It's like first he said you don't need a mask, and now wear the mask. Now, maybe you should have 2 masks. It's like, folks, wait, listen to what this guy's saying. No mask, wear a mask, and then 60 days, 30 days, and then now we'll have a vaccine. Everything will be okay. No, we need to separate. No, you can't. They keep moving the goalposts. It keeps changing.
True. Although I must say, guys, in fairness, I mean, I think that in the timeline of this COVID pandemic, I mean, it was very early on when they said don't wear a mask, which of course was a complete contradiction. You're right. But, presumably they learned. I mean, even at the time, it actually made no sense because what they were saying is don't wear a mask because it doesn't work and healthcare workers need them, which at the time, a fellow journalist friend of mine pointed out to me made absolutely no sense. If they do nothing, then why do the healthcare workers need them? So I guess for those who were listening closely and thinking critically, there was something off there. So clearly, I mean, the issue is the masks mitigate somewhat, hence the use of them by healthcare workers, but they're not a perfect guarantee of anything. And, but I think in terms of the timeline, I mean, they did reverse themselves fairly early on with that. The part that I really find irrational is, this whole idea that it was all. Anyway, that's another subject. But
let's just listen to what the good doctor had to say about all that. Listen to it.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks. You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this. And right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. Wear a mask. Now in the United States.
Wear 2 masks.
Yeah.
Make it a double.
That says it all. That says it all right there. Now, just pivoting just a little bit. I want to talk about something that everyone is on everyone's mind right now. And you've seen it on Twitter, you've seen it on Facebook, all over on social media. And that is GameStop. Now, I worked in the financial industry, and I was amazed at what was taking place, and they were sticking it to the big guy. But what I found even amazing and interesting is the fact that they decided to, Robinhood decided to halt people from buying shares in GameStop, AMC, and there was another stock. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, what is this? And who gave the order for them to halt the sale of it? I mean, I know this, like, okay, well, we're going to slow down, we're going to close the market or whatever, but to tell people you can no longer buy this for whatever reason, because the big guys are hemorrhaging, they're suffering, and we don't want them to suffer. It's like, but that's what happens to the little guy all the time. So I was listening to Charles Payne this morning, and he was talking about it. And I was trying to find the video with him. Here it is. Here, I'll play this, and then Manny, we definitely want to get your thoughts on this.
All this nonsense, all this noise.
So hold on one second.
All
I'm going to call this up because I want our viewers to see this. Here we go.
this nonsense, all this noise, all this whining by Wall Street, it's making me sick. 140% of GameStop was short. I didn't hear one person on TV complaining about Wall Street trying to crush GameStop. 140% short. You can't allow Wall Street to short 75% of a stock, and nobody says anything. Crush these companies into the dirt, and then when the individual investor makes money, everyone's up in arms. They want to change the rules of the game now because the general public is making money after decades of the shorts crushing thousands of stocks into the dirt.
And so when he says, Wall Street was shorting the stock, what that means is these professional institutional investors are betting that a stock will go down. They make money if it goes down. So there are these people on Reddit, and they're talking about, hey, I like GameStop. I like AMC, the movie company.
I like BlackBerry.
So they drove the prices up, 1,000% in some cases. And now Wall Street's going, well, you know what? They could be doing something suspicious. It could be that pump and dump thing where you pump something up online, you talk it up, and then as soon as the price goes up, they dump it. They're not. They essentially are buying it and buying it. So this is a case of David versus Goliath. And right now, David, the little day traders who are bored during the pandemic in some cases, are making a lot of money on paper by betting against Wall Street. And
there you have it. Manny, what are your thoughts?
I got to tell you, I never thought like being a securities lawyer and working around Wall Street for 30 years is such a nerdy kind of, Poindexter kind of thing. I've been called by so many people, and my son actually told me when this was first happening.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a good father-son bonding situation. He's 20 and he trades on Robinhood. He was telling me the whole deal about it. So we're going back and forth. I'm giving this kid like a securities regulation 101, class effectively on text. I'm texting him stuff and he's asking me questions. So, it's an interesting kind of scenario, right? In terms of the way it's being spun in terms of like the haves versus the have-nots. Okay. So kind of what I've been doing is kind of like trying to calm everybody down. Right. So what happened with GameStop is something that happened to Overstock.com years ago. They got crushed by something called a short squeeze. So what happens essentially is that when people sell stock short, they don't own the stock.
Right.
They have to borrow it from someone, right? Because they don't have it. So they have to get it, borrow it, pay short interest, and then sell it. And the anticipation is that the stock is going to go down in price. So for example, if I sold short to Rob at 10, I would borrow it from Andrew. I pay Andrew interest to borrow it. And then if the stock moved down to 5, I made $5, right? It went from 10 to 5 per share. And then I pay Andrew back his interest. So I did pretty good on that trade. The problem is you can short stocks well beyond the float, meaning that if there's 100 stocks that trade, you might be able to short 1,000 stocks, believe it or not. So it's kind of a weird thing in the securities regs that you could short beyond the number of stocks that trade. And what that does is it creates a situation that happened with GameStop, because if 1,000 people shorted it, but only 100, let's say not 100, say 500 shares, right? It's too high the ratio. The stock is hard to borrow. Okay, you're gonna have a tough time borrowing the stock. So the stock becomes restricted. They put that stock on a restricted list. So that's really what happened with GameStop, where Apex Clearing is the clearer for Robinhood. Okay, so my understanding is Apex put pressure on Robinhood to create a 300% requirement of margin, in terms of you have to have 3 times the amount of the trade in your account to do the trade, right? The second thing is then Robinhood put a restriction on buying. Now again, say why they put a restriction on buying? Because what they were worried about, Robinhood, is they were worried about, because there's so much volatility in the stock, right? The stock went from a couple of dollars to $480, and then it kept coming back down. So effectively, if these younger kids, because predominantly Robinhood, who trades on Robinhood, are young kids, okay, that have absolutely no experience, and they trade on margin, where a margin means that the brokerage firm is giving them a loan, really not Robinhood, but the clearing firm. So, the fear is that because this stock literally is yo-yoing 100 or 200 points, these young kids would buy the stock, and then the stock could crash, meaning the stock is worthless, and that could take down Robinhood. So Robinhood, spoke to the clearing firm and said, we need to essentially halt this stuff. Now, the exchanges weren't involved that I'm aware of, because this didn't seem to be a problem at other firms, like at Goldman Sachs, for example. It was a problem at TD Ameritrade. They did the same thing effectively that Robinhood did. So I don't necessarily think that what Robinhood did was problematic if Robinhood wasn't doing it to benefit Citadel or to benefit itself. In other words, if Robinhood was experiencing difficulty, they should have identified that they were. But they made it sound like they were doing this for regulatory purposes. If they were doing it for regulatory purposes, they were in consultation with either FINRA or the SEC, I'm sure, and the clearing firm, and they did it to create some kind of stability in a very volatile market. That's probably okay. Now, where this whole story's gone wrong is that Citadel has a relationship with Robinhood. When you trade on Robinhood, it's free. So I trade on E-Trade, and it's like $7.95 a trade. When you trade on Robinhood, it's free. Well, how could it be free if they're offering the same service? That one firm is charging me $8 or more. They're charging me nothing. They sell my order flow, Robinhood, to a hedge fund called Citadel. And that's what you mentioned earlier, that Janet Yellen spoke or whatever to Citadel, or was involved with Citadel, and they paid her $800,000. So part of her deal is she has to recuse herself from anything now as Secretary of Treasury for 1 year. So she can't get involved in this, okay? So, but Robinhood was transparent. I knew this forever. That's how Robinhood's business model was. We're just going to sell everybody's order flow to a hedge fund. They're going to pay me. I'm going to use what they pay me to make money. That's my revenue source. It's like Facebook with advertising. Robinhood doesn't charge you to trade. They take your trading trades, and they sell your trade information to Citadel. That's permissible under the law. It's not illegal. The question is, when Robinhood kind of toggled down a trading and put in restrictions, they allowed you to sell, of course. If they didn't allow you to sell, that'd be extremely problematic. That's going straight to court, okay? Right. And you would collect. There's class actions filed. I read the class actions. The class actions are negligence and breach of fiduciary duty. They're not going to be successful, and I'll tell you why. Because I think Robinhood did this, and their argument is to help the integrity of the markets and to maintain transparency and efficiency in orderly markets, and that's a good fallback. Now, here's what's interesting. Back in the day, and I'm old enough that I was around when this happened, people would use chat rooms to manipulate stocks. So we talked about shorting a stock. Okay, how you destroy shorts. So there was a hedge fund called Melvin Capital. They were very aggressive in shorting GameStop. Okay, their exposure was billions of dollars. So these kids on Reddit, assuming that they're kids on Reddit. We don't know if there's other hedge funds on Reddit pretending to be kids who want to take out Melvin Capital. So what they do is they are talking up the stock from a couple of dollars a share to $400 something a share. Now that stock's hard to borrow, right? Because it's shorted so much, multiples at a float. What happens is they create something called a short squeeze, and it's a classic manipulation. So you think the stock that I sold you at 10 is going to go to 5. That thing goes to 405. So I am in massive trouble, right? Now, how did it go to 405? Well, that's this Reddit activity with this Wall Street Bets group. You know, did they collude? Did they say you buy, you put in limit orders and keep increasing the price? We don't know. We don't know what they did. We're making it sound like they're innocent young children who just put in these orders and the stock miraculously went from $5 to $405. That is impossible. To me, there was manipulation that occurred in the Reddit group or people behind the Reddit group that pumped up this stock to squeeze the hedge funds. And because the volatility in that stock was so much, you know, the vol was incredible. The vol today in the market was incredible. I own Facebook shares, and I was really happy. The market opened up in Facebook because Facebook posted earnings yesterday at 5 p.m. The market opened up 14 points. Now, Facebook went up $14 from 9:30 to 10:05. The whole day it went down. Facebook closed down 7 points. So Facebook, which is one of the FANG stocks, it's a great, might not like Facebook, but it's a great stock, right? A multi-billion-dollar company. The diff was 14 up and 7 down. That's 21 points, and that's Facebook. So imagine if you have a kid who's trading, he or she, they don't know what to do, how to handle the stuff. So Robinhood made that decision, and it's not the rich and the poor. Anybody could short stocks, number one. Number two, look, at the end of the day, the SEC needs to investigate this. My understanding is they've contacted Robinhood already, and they're requesting trade information, and they're going to look at who did what. But to jump to conclusions that it's not fair that these kids, they just made money innocently. One, we don't know that. And two, anybody could short stocks. It's not a crime. And why are we hating on the hedge funds? I mean, everything the hedge funds do, they're examined by the SEC and FINRA. It's legal to the extent that they're examined. And let's not forget, I watched Tucker tonight, and Tucker had on a Glenn Greenwald, and he was saying, isn't it crazy how these guys are billionaires and they made all their money from hedge funds? And I'm like, what value did that add to society? And I'm like, well, LeBron James, he's an athlete, and I guess he adds value to society as a superstar athlete. But is he worth $50 million a year? That's debatable. Is Kanye worth $1 billion? Is Kim Kardashian worth $1 billion? What value are they adding to society? But now we're picking on the hedgies and saying, well, the hedgies don't add value to society. They do. They manage pension funds. They manage money for municipalities. And I know you worked in the financial community, Rob. I have for 30 years, and I've met some great people in the community, very philanthropic. And of course, there's bad actors. But what's weird about this whole thing to me is you have Ted Cruz and AOC agreeing. It's not just Elizabeth Warren against Wall Street. Now it's become this movement, almost a lot of Trump supporters are now anti-Wall Street as anti-establishment. And then what I heard, which just drives me crazy, is it's rigged. The system is rigged. So technically, Robinhood rigged this today so people couldn't buy the stock, which, by the way, went down. So if they bought it, they would have lost money.
Right. But one of the things that the big gripes about hedge funds is that although we say they're regulated, but they're not regulated as severely as other investment vehicles. It's almost as if though the SEC doesn't follow through on these guys. So they're able to go out there and, with little to no money, and use other people's money and do a lot of these calls and hoping that, hey, this is going to go down. And I think that's the thing that gets to people's gut.
I get it, but it's like, there's no moral equivalency. It's like, okay, because hedge funds get away with stuff, we're going to pull this manipulation and claim we're doing it in this Reddit thing to crush a hedge fund, and that's okay. we could like crush a hedge fund by potentially doing something illegal. I don't think that's cool. I don't think it's cool that we're teaching our youth to be so angry and to think that everything is rigged. Because what is there to believe in? We don't believe in the elections. We don't believe now in the markets. What's left? I mean,
I don't, listen, the financial piece is way outside my bailiwick, guys, in terms of understanding the complexities. But I just think that there's kind of an overall sense that that these massive hedge funds, not to say that they don't have their value but that the idea particularly of shorting, if I'm understanding right, is betting against something. And these particular companies are associated with brick and mortar stores. They're kind of beloved to some. GameStop, right? Blockbuster, the movie company, AMC. I mean, they're big companies. They're not mom and pops, to be sure. But I wonder if maybe there's also kind of on an emotional level, maybe a sense of I was speaking to a smart teenager today who understands a lot more about these things than I do. And he said, well, these are like regular people who were just jagging, which is an expression we have in Pittsburgh, jagging the billionaires, trying to say, well, if you guys can make all this money, we can play the game too. And I just wonder if maybe the choice of companies also was maybe not consciously, but I know it isn't a political thing. Fundamentally, it's a financial move. But I wondered if maybe it had something to do with all these shutdowns, the way retail is suffering so terribly in this COVID time. Trying to help these old companies.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Because
Absolutely,
a lot of people feel that hedge funds will go and they'll see a company, they'll say, hey, it's not good. Well, overall, it's speculative. I mean, because you can go in and you can say, hey, this company is worth $1 million and it's worth absolutely nothing. It has no basis, but the talk, it will bring it up and people will start buying. Only to find out later on, it's like, wait, why did I even buy this?
Look at Tesla. I mean, Tesla's been hyped up to hell by Elon Musk, and Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. I mean, he surpassed Bezos. But think about this though. There's a bit of an irony that people aren't talking through, so I'll point it out. These young kids that are trading who are like anti, these billionaires, right?
Well, we think they were young kids because
we think they were young kids, right? We don't know who they are, but in terms of the spirit of the argument, it's these younger kids, and it's an anti, we're going to show those billionaires, that kind of thing, right? But we just talked before about people being unemployed and people not having money. These kids are trading. So, like, where the hell did they get money to trade? Like, obviously, they could afford to lose a couple of grand.
Right.
Before we were talking about people who can't afford to eat because they're not working. Right. Something's out of line.
Well, they're using their unemployment.
They're using unemployment, or they're using their allowance from their mommy and daddy to go rule against those bad hedgies and those billionaires. But hey, kid, you're rich. Hey, kid, you're rich because your mom and dad are giving you money to trade. Because if you were poor, trust me, you wouldn't be traded on Robinhood. You wouldn't even know what the hell Robinhood was.
But
well,
I don't know.
I'll say this, if these were in fact kids, and we don't know because a lot of people will go in, and make these trades, and then people will assume. I mean, there's no It's a great manipulation. It's a great cover for manipulation. It's a great strategy. It was a great strategy,
You've done compliance. You know what I'm talking about. That could be they're blue sheeting this right now. The SEC wants to know who own those accounts.
Yep. Eventually they're going to get to the bottom of it if we hear. So, but now I want to pivot just a little bit more because we had a question here. Is getting off of hold on a second. Of GameStop. Are we done with GameStop? Okay, so
does that mean they want us to be? Okay, then we're done with
the only thing I would say is, apologies if I'm missing a lot, but look, the market there's an element of gamesmanship and gambling to it. And I guess I don't quite understand why these people can't do it. I mean, I kind of feel like, this time it went against the billionaires, and that's kind of what they do all the time, is is gamble in a sense.
Well, no, I agree with you. I'm saying we're jumping to conclusions that Robinhood slowed down trading or stopped trading to benefit the billionaires. And that's a nice narrative to spin, and these young kids kind of, played and monopoly money and whatever. We don't know that's the case, but it just fits in nicely with this narrative, which is anti-establishment. And now we moved away from the swamp, kind of, sort of, for at least a couple of days, and now we're focusing on Wall Street and hedge funds, kind of moving into the swamp. Janet Yellen is the swamp, the SEC is the swamp, the government's the swamp. So it's a kind of interesting thing to me. It's like a separate, it's not MAGA people per se who are upset at the election. Now it's these younger, assuming younger, a new set of people who kind of have a similar argument, but then again, they use the rig word. And that's troubling to me, because we don't know it's rigged, but immediately as a society, instead of just saying something happened, somebody made a decision, we trust a decision, you won, I lost, I won, you lost, whatever. There's always a winner and a loser. It's rigged. We didn't lose. You rigged it to benefit the billionaires. You took money away from me. Everything is rigged
questioning
now.
the market itself.
I wonder if this is all part of the whole scheme.
It might be, but it's creating this doubt in the world that nothing could be believed. Everything is to be questioned.
What it is? I mean, I even put a piece about that, and I said, now first it started out with you can't question the election. Now it's, now with Wall Street, they can't tell us what to do. We can shut them down. So is this part of some greater scheme? I hope not. Now, the question that came out to us that was for you, Manny, is, here we go. Government is taking over, becoming weaker. Okay, is the whole thing with Joe Biden ruling or not governing by executive order, is that permissible?
That's a great question. There were a ton of legal challenges against Trump's executive orders, because there's certain things that a president could do via executive order,
right?
But a lot of it should be done legislatively. That it goes to the Congress and the Senate, and the president signs it. So you look at DACA, right? So Trump signed executive order for DACA, and that was reversed by the federal court, that they reinstituted DACA. Trump was getting rid of DACA, and then they went, whatever group challenged it and said he has no basis as president. This needs to be done legislatively, not through the executive fiat of executive order. So it depends on what the executive order is about, but they are challengeable. They are challengeable, absolutely. And the argument is the president doesn't have the ability to do this kind of thing via executive order. It needs to be done legislatively.
But it is in the Constitution that the president can take those steps. Granted, as I said earlier on, the next person that comes in, he can very easily roll them back because they're not law. They can just stay,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is,
they can be challenged, of course.
100%. What's crazy right now is if you're president, you could just undo the executive orders of the previous president, and then depending on who the Congress is, if it's the opposite party, you'll just get impeached. President and the Democratic House, they'll, maybe if the House turns Republican, they'll impeach Biden. Absolutely guaranteed. Marjorie Greene in Georgia already, wants to move forward with articles of impeachment against Biden. So it's just, it's just kind of abusing the impeachment, which even this impeachment with Trump, it has no value, right?
Oh, that's the next thing I was going to bring up.
It just seems like it's kind of, because of the fact that he's out, it's kind of useless. But every time you hear impeachment now, we're just so done with it. It's not real anymore.
Right. So that leads me to our next clip. I want everyone to listen to this.
Trump, because he incited violence, etc., etc. But take a listen to this.
They're not going to be able to go to a restaurant. They're not going to be able to stop at a gas station. They're not going to be able to shop at a department store. The people are going to turn on them. They're going to protest. They're going to absolutely harass them. I am sitting here listening, watching, absorbing, thinking about Ali, even though I never met him. And with this kind of inspiration, I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Now, that's interesting. Everyone at the time, they thought that was funny. They laughed about it. Now, if she could make those comments, and you look
at what the president said, her comments to me were more inflammatory. than him saying we're going to march to the White House peacefully. And now you have McCarthy, who's saying that he's going to have a conversation with Marjorie Taylor Greene about some comments that she made on Facebook or liked on Facebook. And I find it interesting that no one has said anything to Maxine Waters, to my knowledge. No one has said anything to the now current vice president, who was on Ellen DeGeneres saying that if she was in an elevator with, I think, Trump or Pence, what would she do? And she said, well, does one of us have to come out alive? I mean, and then you look back at previous statements that were made, you look at things that were done. You had a play, Shakespeare in the Park here in New York City, of someone killing an actor that resembles President Trump.
Oh, yeah.
A rap star making a video about blowing Trump's brains out. I mean, and the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. But no one said, okay, this is inciting violence. Republicans requiring, and look at Steve Scalise. He was shot, almost killed in 2017 during a softball game with the Senators. And no one to this day have ever tied that to the Bernie bros. Quiet as it's kept, no one mentions it, but we want to go on and say, well, the president incited violence. Like, but look at what the Democrats have done. The double standard is right in your face. But yet and still, here we are with an impeachment. Or, well, let's censor him. And it's all political. And what's even sad is that there's no one out there to challenge the opposing side, because if you do, you're shut down. They want to kick people out of Congress for saying, hey, we want to challenge the certification of the votes. But if you look back in 2016 and 2000, you had the Democrats standing on the House floor doing the exact same thing. But quiet as it's kept. Manny, what are your thoughts on this impeachment?
Yeah, well, firstly, the impeachment is unconstitutional because the point of impeachment is to convict and remove. So the House moved to, approve the articles of impeachment without any due process. So the president didn't have a lawyer there, whatever. It was just fast track to come up with articles of impeachment. That's the first thing. Then the House, you saw they walked through the Congress and delivered them officially. It's like a funeral dirge, they're all sad. They hold it out, They give it to the Senate. The Senate has a trial, and the trial, three things could happen. Well, really two things happen at the trial. The president could be acquitted like he was the first time, or he could be convicted and removed. When you the operative word is end. It's not just convicted. The whole point is to be convicted and removed. But this is oxymoronic. He's not there. So how could he be removed if he's not there? So there's really no point in doing the impeachment.
They're scared of him, Manny. They're scared that
right, and there's no way they could. It wouldn't be. I don't think it would be held.
If he ran again, they don't want to let it.
Right, but he, two things. One, it wouldn't be upheld by the Supreme Court. In terms of constitutionality of the impeachment is unconstitutional. Secondly, there's nothing they could do to prevent him from running again. They're looking to, kind of put a marker on him in terms of, convict him and then change removal to prevent him from running again. They can't do it.
If they did somehow successfully impeach him, my understanding was that then he wouldn't be able to run again, but legally. Is that wrong?
Well, according to Dershowitz, if they are well, for one, as Manny said, it's unconstitutional because he's out of office. The purpose of impeachment is to remove the person. But if they are successful, I mean, they could say, okay, he can't run again, but it brings up the legal question. You can't impeach someone who's not in office, and who's going to challenge that? Who's going to say, wait, this is unconstitutional, what we're doing? It's null and void because he's not in office.
Yeah, here's the thing.
Motivation. I was just talking about what because I initially thought it was just purely vengeful vendetta, which it certainly is that. But I think it's also that they know how powerful he has been and still is, and this is their idea tactically to hobble him for good.
And you have Republicans who are hoping for the same thing because they want to wrestle that power from him, so they think they could do, and then put it back in their own hands. The man you were about to say, I'm sorry.
I mean, what they're trying to do is essentially, I got to put my glasses on because I'm old now, I can't read. All the work I've done all these years. So what they're trying to also get him under is under the 14th Amendment, which a lot of people are not familiar with, Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president, vice president, blah, 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 to support the Constitution, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to enemies thereof. Okay, so kind of that's the situation. And so they're trying to say, notice that they're trying to weave all this together, you know, insurrection, that's really, you know, inciting violence, insurrection, and then talking about the 14 Amendment. So they're all over the place. You're absolutely right, trying to prevent him from running again. But I got to tell you, what's interesting is I'm aware of kind of many people who were around the Capitol, some people who went in, some people who were close to going in, some people who were on the steps. And the FBI is very aggressive in arresting everybody who was kind of near the place, and very broadly looking at you know, insurrection, incitement of violence, you know. So I think, and I could be wrong, and I hope I'm wrong, but they're going to arrest many hundreds of people. And in a normal kind of situation, and not as politicized, right? So when the judicial and enforcement type stuff gets politicized, that's just like you're in Belarus, you know, and that's kind of where we're at right now. But, you know, we have a new sheriff in town, Merrick Garland, whoever. We're going to have a new Justice Department. So they're going to come down with the heavy hand of the law. So why I'm saying that is, you know, the same lens is being viewed to the president in terms of, in a normal sense, what he said in a normal time, what he said when he gave that speech, like march peacefully to the Capitol or whatever, wouldn't be like an incitement to violence or insurrection. But in this weird, hyperbolic, bizarro chamber we're in, you know, they're viewing that as it is. And again, if you read the complaints filed against a lot of people that have been arrested, you know, wow. I mean, people were standing there. Some people walked in, you know, they didn't do anything. They didn't touch anyone in there. They didn't touch anything. And, you know, they could be in prison for years.
But Manny, how is that legal? I mean, how? Maybe I sound naive, but it's like there is law in this country, and there is a legal standard for incitement. There is a whole huge amount of precedent in this country. This is our foundational principle, the First Amendment, as we know. And, you know, I mean, I was saying to these guys, I'm not an attorney, but I studied a little media law in journalism school. And I know the Nazis could march in Skokie, Illinois. And, you know, there's a lot of speech that's been upheld in this country. So the idea to me that they could actually convict him of the crime of incitement based on a reading of that speech, I mean, to me, maybe I'm naive, but it sounds like that would fall right apart.
Well, they're adding to it. You know, you're right. They're adding to it. They're saying, you know, his tweets and what he said at other speech. I mean, they're trying to like supplement. It is, but you know, I look, at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to get to 67 votes in the Senate. So I don't think he's going to be convicted. I think he's going to be acquitted. But the situation we're in is very dangerous because they're going after people hardcore right now.
Right. And here's the other thing. I mean, I'm glad we're having this conversation because, like you said, if there were any other time, they would just like throw it away. But how can you even have a trial? I mean, it's not constitutional.
Figurative language, based on saying fight for your country.
Not just the language. He is no longer in office, and I would think that a lawyer would be able to argue what you're doing now is unconstitutional. While we're even having this conversation, is unconstitutional.
Here's the argument. Here's the counter. Sorry to jump in. Lawrence Tribe, who's a constitutional law professor at Harvard.
Go ahead.
Sorry, you broke up for a bit. Sorry to cut you off. I'll jump in. But he
Oh, go ahead.
said, why should Trump benefit from the fact that his term ended? If he's going to be impeached, he's going to be impeached. If he should be impeached for doing what he did, he should be impeached. He just kind of lucked out that he did what he did, and then his term ended on January 20th. But if this was last year, yeah, he'd be impeached.
But
So
what did he do? He had a rally. He didn't tell them to do that.
we are living in a bad environment. We are like living in, if you go to Mexico, I went to Cancun in early 2020 to a conference, and I had a great time, whatever. And I'm in the airport going back from Cancun, flying to New York, and there's a female police officer, agent, enforcement agent, and my luck, she pulls me over as I walk into my plane, and she detained me for like 20 minutes. But I felt okay because I had nothing on me and I was in the airport. But the fear is that when you're in Mexico, who knows what the hell's going to happen?
Exactly.
That's happening in America now. So you have a lawyer and whatever, but you just kind of like shrug your shoulders. And I'll tell you, the other thing that's going on is they're using facial recognition. Right. So when we had these riots and protests over the summer, I don't know if you're aware of this. The cops didn't arrest a lot of people, particularly in New York. There was a lot of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, a lot of looting, and the police wanted to use facial recognition. Well, guess who refused to help them with the tools for facial recognition? Facebook. They didn't provide assistance. But now I read there's over 150,000 different photos and videos, whatever. And the FBI is using facial recognition. And if you see on Twitter, the FBI tweets a picture of some guy, and it's like 5 different angles of the guy. And it's like, please let us know who this guy is. He has a MAGA hat or whatever. He's in the Capitol. And it's all these different angles from like different perspectives. And I'm like, wait a minute. In the summer, Facebook's like, no, it's discriminatory if we like, guys smash the window or something, so and we can't give his face. And there's a video camera in the store. He broke through the store. Oh, we can't release that video.
This is extremely scary. This is extremely dangerous. I mean, and there's so many people who are, and I've spoken about this before, and I mentioned this on Twitter before they shut us down for whatever reason. I don't know why, but of course, as I said before, I've always used the videos that they put out, and I posted them again to remind people. And this is the reason why it is so scary. Because this summer, like you mentioned, we had all of this violence taking place. You had the burning down of buildings, businesses, Black businesses. Of course, they say Black Lives Matter. Black people were killed. Police officer.
Thank you.
There was even a police precinct that was burned down while the police were in it, and they got out. They had to vacate the police. There were federal buildings burned, in Seattle and taken over. No one said anything about it. Now, this summer, they tried to burn down the St. John's Church, which is next to the Capitol. There were a lot of people saying, we don't care. That is a symbol of institutional racism. The Capitol is an institutional racism. We should get rid of all these buildings. And now, January 6th, all at once, these buildings became holy and sacred. Now, what I saw, I didn't see an insurrection. I didn't see them taking over. Okay, no, I wasn't there. But they were saying they tried to take over government. How the heck did they try to take over the government? They did not try to take over the government. Maybe it was a scare. I'm not saying they should have done it. But the way this is being spun is that they tried to take over. They're going to take away the government. It doesn't make any sense.
The other thing
let me finish. Who were they going to take it away from? Were they literally going to grab Mitch McConnell or Mike Pence and say, you better do it this way because if you don't, we're going to kill you? Okay, let's say, God forbid, that happened. They would have gotten shot. I mean, so we're making it seem as if, no, this country is like Russia, and that they were going to take it over, and then Trump was going to come in, and he was going to say, the military is under my command, and you're going to do X, Y, Z. They are scaring people, and with the troops that are still there in D.C., I'm like, are you serious? When Tom Cotton wrote a piece for the New York Times, I think it was, saying that we should have the National Guards to go out and protect these cities, everyone lambasted him and say, how dare you? This is not a police state. We can't do this. And they attacked him viciously. But now January 6th, it's okay. And that is a troubling part of it because you have people on both sides who see this. And they know that it's scaring the American people, thinking that, oh no, they're out there, they're going to try to take over. It's like, who is they? And what are they going to try and do? 100 people, they would be killed. Remember when they were going to try to force their way, so they said, to the White House, and they had to rush the president to a private bunker, and everyone on TV, CNN, MSNBC, they were laughing about it. Ha, 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 ha. I bet Trump was scared then. But now we're supposed to take this seriously? I'm like, is anyone not looking and seeing how this is a box that's about to explode because of the lies that are being spent, and no one is coming out and saying, no, we have to stop lying. Look at Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, who's saying, oh, Ted Cruz wanted to kill me. Then you have others that are saying, oh, there are some white supremacists that are here on Capitol Hill. It's like, this is America. Robert Byrd has been dead for quite some time, a century. But now you're trying to say that the people that are there, simply because they don't agree with your ideology, simply because they don't agree with your politics, you now want to label them? We've gone from racism to there's white supremacists and they're going to kill us. They're out for blood. That is extremely dangerous, because if they're able to do it with that and to deceive the masses, just imagine when we are under high alert, when things do change, who are we to believe? This is extremely dangerous. And I think that someone should call them out. Kevin McCarthy, he's going to talk to Marjorie Taylor Greene, but why don't you say, Nancy Pelosi, you need to talk to Maxine Waters? Because there's a lot of...
What about Swalwell? What about Swalwell? He's one of the foremen. He's the one of the foremen of the impeachment.
He is one of the foremen of the impeachment managers, and no one has said, Swalwell, you shouldn't be here. It's as if though it's okay.
He got a promotion. He's gonna get his mug on TV, leading the impeachment, grilling the president.
And they're saying, well, we've got to keep the troops here because there's a threat. Now, mind you, the FBI has said, well, yeah, we've seen some chatter, but there's no credible threats. But people don't hear that, and the media isn't going to report it. The only thing they're going to report is the FBI hears chatter. Well, they hear chatter all the time. What about when President Trump was the president? I can imagine what they were hearing. But simply because we heard chatter, there's nothing that's imminent, but we need to keep the troops here. This is really sad. It's extremely sad. Andrew, you've been quiet the entire time because we've been talking. Do you want to jump in and say something? This is a really good conversation.
Yeah, I've just been taking in what you guys have been saying and absolutely agree. I've not been a fan of this impeachment, obviously, since it started, and I think it's going to fall apart. Did you guys see Rand Paul questioned the senators if it was constitutional or not?
He was brilliant.
He did a motion to dismiss, and they laughed at him. Yeah, but I mean, it was just a way of getting rid of it, and they wouldn't have it.
I went back and I listened to what he was saying, and he went from Maxine Waters to all the other people, and no one is talking about it on the media. No one is saying, look at the points that he made that are valid. These people, if anything, were inciting a crowd, a riot. But I mean, Maxine Waters, go in front of them. She's out there in the public forum saying these things. Eric Holder. Barack Obama even said, you go and you get in their face and you argue with them. But I'm like, what is the difference?
Why doesn't Biden jump in? If Biden says, I want to be the president for all people, not just the people who voted for me.
He's afraid.
What doesn't he come in and stop this nonsense? I mean, we were just talking about COVID and people need money and relief.
Yep.
How much money are we wasting? Congress can't walk and chew gum at the same time. They're going to stop doing whatever they need to do with another relief package and focus on this impeachment stuff. They got to really prepare for that stuff because they're concerned they're going to be on TV. They don't want to look stupid, right? So it's going to be just another waste of time and not doing the people's business for nonsensical reasons. It's a waste of time.
Manny, I'm going to put you on the spot. You should run for office.
Thank you.
We'll support you.
Thank you.
I mean, we need good people out there running, because clearly the people that are there now, we
got to take over the House. I mean, nothing else matters but taking over the House. And that was my whole thing about the election, was that, like, I get it and it sucked and we were pissed, but I was like, Biden signed these executive orders, and we could just keep talking about the election and he's just signing away. And it's like, we got to just cut and just say, okay, it's done. It was a problem. We need to have election integrity, but let's win 2022 because then
Yeah.
we could really put the clamps to Biden. And if we don't do that, we have to start now. It's February almost. We need to start now.
Yeah, we've got to, because I don't know who we have here. I know that AOC is planning on challenging Chuck Schumer, which I could care less about. But yeah, we've got to, because this is ridiculous as to what's happening. But in a liberal state like New York, not a state, but a city like New York, it's like, is it possible?
Look. We have a mayoral election, right,
Oh,
in November, and it's February in 2 days. And who's the Republican candidate? You should be, when Rudy lost in '89, and then he won in '93. And I did work for Rudy in his campaign, like volunteer work, and then I got more involved eventually. But he started campaigning literally. He lost. He conceded to David Dinkins. He rested up for a bit, and he started campaigning right away because I got an email. There was a fundraiser from Donna Hanover, was Rudy's wife at the time. He was married to Donna, the mother of his children, and he started campaigning like 2 weeks after he lost. And it was a fundraiser for Rudy. It takes that long to win the mayoralty in New York, and we don't even have one viable Republican candidate for the city of New York, the mayor of the city of New York. And it's almost February. You know how long it takes to campaign? Months to raise money.
We need Kelly. We need.
Yeah, and he's not interested in running because he's worried about cancel culture. So the question's going to be, do you support Trump? And then, you can't work for J.P. Morgan, who everyone wants to work for as like head of security.
Ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous.
That's the problem. I mean, imagine if you work for the president in your life. Isn't that a prestigious thing?
Yeah.
My God, how many people do that, right? You become like Stephanopoulos. Not that we like him, but makes millions of dollars a year as a journalist. He was the chief of staff of Bill Clinton. You work for Trump, people like hate you. They protest outside of your house.
Well, that's what they
attack your children, attack you in a restaurant. How is that normal? Not only working for him, but as a lawyer. Imagine when I was doing volunteers, when I was involved with the Lawyers for Trump, when I volunteered. There were two people that I work with who are partners at big firms. They got cancel culture by the Lincoln Project. They put their name, their email, their phone numbers on social media, their LinkedIn profiles. Okay, so these people started freaking out because they're worried about their families. So then they withdrew. So you even now, like, who's going to represent Trump? All the people in the impeachment, all the people who represent him at the first impeachment, Pam Bondi, Jay Sekulow, even Rudy, they're not doing it. And Rudy now, somebody filed a complaint against Rudy to disbar him in New York. I mean, it's just insanity. Everybody has a right to counsel. This is crazy.
The country of leadership.
Who's going to stand up? Who is going to push back? This is unacceptable.
What do you guys? Why Trump was elected. He was the one who talked back to these people. And they managed to turn it all around on him.
Go ahead, Andrew.
What do you guys think of a New York implant running for mayor this year? Not from New York. I think he just moved there to run.
Andrew Yang?
Yeah, Andrew Yang, quite a progressive individual. Do you think he will fare well in New York City?
Let me say this. If the city goes under, as we're saying earlier, and has all these problems because people will be in such dire need of help, and if he promises to give them like that income of how much, whatever,
UBI, yep,
yeah, he will get it.
He'll buy the election. Hey, I'll give you $1,000 a month. Would you vote for me? What would you say?
Yep,
sign me up.
Absolutely, I'll do it. I would do it. It's like if the city goes belly up, and if he comes in and says, "Hey, I will get this done," he will be moved to the head of the pack because all the other people, they have no vision. They'll do the same thing over and over again, which is really sad. Like, as Manny said, he would buy the election. But this cancel culture, and no one is saying anything, and it's so prevalent for people to be on the hill saying that, hey, my fellow congressman wanted to kill me, my colleague wanted to kill me, and no one is calling her out, and people are allowing this to happen, is extremely dangerous. Anyone that worked for Trump, as if Trump was Hitler. They have people thinking that he's Hitler. And just imagine the kids that are in school that are being taught this, that he was Hitler. The comparison, when this guy did so much for the country, he did more than Barack Obama did in 8 years. And they know it. The powers that be, they know it, but they don't want to say it. That is simply because they hate him. That is extremely dangerous. Now, one more thing I want to bring up is Amazon. Amazon is against mail-in ballots for unions. Who would have figured? whole thing, and now, oh no, we dangerous for thee, not for me. And again, people don't see it because the media won't report
Amazon
it.
is
The
too big to fail. I mean,
contradictions
where's the
that are taking place.
boycotts? Where's the boycotts
Well,
against
oh,
Amazon?
well,
I mean,
not only
Amazon booted Parler. Amazon booted Parler, AWS,
Yeah.
Amazon Web Services, they booted Parler. Who's not using Amazon? Where's the protest in front of Amazon?
Exactly. And you can't because Amazon is so intricately tied to
Too
everything
big to
we do
fail.
in society. Yeah.
Too big to fail.
I mean, they even AWS for the government. They have an entire setup, I think, somewhere in Fairfax, Virginia, with all the government records. I mean, this is so dangerous.
Well,
How
think
did
about
we
it
let
too.
this
We
happen?
as a community don't stick together. You know, I got to be honest. You know, if this was an attack on the Democrats,
Yep.
they would mobilize and they'd be protesting at 6:30 tomorrow. They'd have the
Yep.
signs, the same
Yep.
font and everything. They would put it in action. Us guys are just kind of like, you know,
We talk the talk, but we don't do the walk. I mean, man, we spoke about this earlier on, and like in our neighborhood with the homeless people. You have all these people who are saying, "Oh my God, this is so bad, this is so bad." But to do something about it, if I were to go out right now and say, "Get them off the street. I don't want them here. I pay taxes. I don't care where they go. Get them off the street." They will look at me and say, "Oh, he's a bad man.
you're a
He's
terrible
bad.
guy. You have no compassion for the homeless
He's
people."
bad."
Meanwhile, these people are sex offenders. They're like
Right,
level
right.
3 sex offenders. You have a daughter, you have a wife, you know, whatever. Like, are you kidding me? But you
Exactly.
can't even criticize because then you're a bad
You're a bad
person.
But they'll get on social media and they'll talk about it. "Oh, did you see this? I couldn't go out and have my Prosecco. I can have my cup of coffee because I have to step over a homeless person, or I have to step over human feces." It's like, but if I were to go out and say, "Get rid of them. I don't want them here. I don't care about them." Oh, you're bad. It's like, wait a minute. But you're going to talk noise on the internet. And you don't want me to come out and just speak the truth? We don't stick together. And like I said, that was so clear with Kevin McCarthy saying he's going to go and talk to Marjorie Taylor Greene and going to pop her in the hand and say, "You need to stop that," whereas the Democrats are getting away with murder.
And that was before she was elected.
Yeah,
supposedly what's
exactly.
at issue is something she put on Facebook, or she liked something, like she's just elected for
Before.
like 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
January 6th or something, 3 weeks,
Exactly.
right?
Whereas you have Democrats that are saying things now, that are doing things now, that are saying, "Don't listen to this person, don't do that." And as quiet as it's kept, no one is saying anything about it. It is horrible.
What
If
about
you don't-
Schumer's speech against Kavanaugh? That was
Yep.
brutal.
Absolutely.
When he was on the steps of the Supreme Court, we'll show him, we'll make him pay, whatever.
Yep.
It's like, oh my God, that
And no
like,
one has said anything.
no,
No
they
one-
thought that was great. He was brave, he was courageous. You know, that was, you know, it's just bad. But I got to tell you, you know, from my perspective, you know, I think what we got to do right now, unfortunately, is put our heads down, because we can't, you know, we got to regroup, but we can't put ourselves in vulnerable positions to get in trouble. Because if you see what's going on, I'm not saying run away from the problem, but
No.
I'm saying you got to be clever, because if you see what happened at the Capitol, many hundreds of people, their lives are forever ruined. The people who were arrested, they got fired from their jobs, their lives are ruined.
But do you think that's a bit excessive?
Yeah, it is. But you know what?
I'm not saying it was right what they did.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, you know, people weren't smart to think it through.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, there's no way I'm going down there, because I don't want to be around that craziness, because it's like I said, you know, going to Mexico, you know,
Right.
where you go to a resort and there's security and it's a gated area, and then you just want to wander off and go for a joyride. I mean, you know, you're kind of taking matters in your own hands. I mean, people didn't think through, wait a minute, Trump at that point, you know, lost or was stolen from him, or whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, you know, Biden was going to get sworn in the next day. I'm going to, you know, 2 weeks later, whatever. And, you know, there's going to be a new attorney general. Like, do I want to put myself in this position? You know, people didn't kind of think that through, you know, so that to me is like, you know, and then, you know, some of the stuff was really stupid. Like that kid who had the zip ties with his mom. I mean, would he go on a field trip? Hey, mom, let's bring some zip ties so I could zip tie Nancy Pelosi. I mean, like that, was, you know. Or then the guy, the guy with the horns, the guy with the horns and the bear skin. What the hell is that? And he looked like, you know, remember wrestling the Ultimate Warrior? Andrew, you know this. You know that. He reminded me of an Ultimate Warrior before he was on steroids. You know, because it was like, you know, he's like,
right. But let's just be honest. What was that? What was he thinking? I mean, maybe he got the marches confused. Maybe he thought this was like
Comic-Con. He was going to Comic-Con or like
Comic-Con.
cosplay or whatever that's
Well,
called.
I
Whatever.
think it was they were trying to make a statement, and
But what
things
statement
got
did that
out of
outfit?
hand.
What was the statement? I want to look as much of an idiot as possible as I can look. Is that the statement? I
Well,
want to look as
maybe it
dumb
was
as
supposed to be kind of a Boston Tea Party moment or something, and then the
with
mob.
the Ultimate Warrior face
The
paint.
ultimate way- I mean,
And
he
keep
goes
in mind,
inside-
guys, keep in mind they had seen, people all summer long be praised and congratulated.
Wait, I'm not. Wait, I agree with that, but the costume that he chose to wear, and then he walks up to the speaker's dais and he goes, "Hey, could you take my picture?" And the officer goes, "Don't do anything wrong. That's sacred." "Oh, I'm not going to do anything. Could you take my picture?" I'm like, what was this guy? I mean, he's all out there, and he's taken up all the regalia, and they were showing him. I'm like, that's the same guy.
Yeah. He's like bald, right? He like takes off that the Viking helmet,
I
and
don't
then it
blame
was
him. I wouldn't
and then
put
it was
that
and then it was
outfit
this other guy who was dressed up like a kind of like in this weird outfit as well, and he's the son of a prominent judge in Brooklyn. He's
Yeah.
Orthodox. I mean,
Yeah, I saw him. I think
he must not be very popular in his household right now in Brooklyn. That's suffice it to
he
say.
seemed like he wasn't quite right, and I think
But like, what's up with the costumes? Like,
I
just
didn't get the costume.
how serious of a protest if these people play dress up?
I mean,
Why
all
did-
the
And then that
reason-
kid, and then the guy with the horns. Did you hear the latest that he only eats vegan?
Yeah.
And his mother walked out to visit him. She goes, "It's so sad. He hasn't eaten in 6 days. He only eats vegan. And they won't give him any vegan food." I'm
And,
like,
well, I think he's
this
getting
can't be
vegan.
real. This just cannot be real.
He's getting the vegan now, but back to something that you were saying, Heather. I mean, we're laughing about this now, but all to me, it just shows that there wasn't an intention to, as the media is saying, to overthrow the government, and they're going to overthrow their domestic terrorists, and we've got to have more laws in the book about domestic terrorists. And in my opinion, when they're pushing that, having more laws for domestic terrorism, it is so that they can silence opinions that they don't like. Because they will always say, conservatives, we don't like what you're saying. He's a terrorist. He's a domestic terrorist. Whereas when we do have real terrorists, they look the other way. As a matter of fact, look at Iraq. They're saying that, Al-Qaeda seems to be growing again. All of this is going to be Biden's fault. But of course, he'll say, oh, Trump. Like Jen Psaki said, when we came in here, we didn't realize the depth of the problems that we were encountering. It's like, lady, please. The economy was doing good prior to COVID-19, thanks to China, and no one is yet to blame China. And now China is saying, oh, this is going to be a Cold War. Now China is saying we got more investments than anyone. And now China, the CNN, I think, Andrew, you might have sent me this article. CNN is saying that China wants to rise as being the head of getting people over this whole COVID-19 thing, China virus that they caused. And again, quiet as it's kept. No one sees it. The media isn't going to report on it. And it's sad to think that there are some people that are out there that actually want the United States to be second fiddle to China. And they're saying, well, maybe China should be the lead. Maybe we shouldn't. Well, what have we done? What sin has this country done that you want this country just to fall by the wayside? Yes, there was slavery, but there was slavery in other countries, okay? There were bad things in other countries. Yes, it is a dark spot on our history, but we're trying to get beyond it. And we've had certain programs out there. But to wish that the country would just like disintegrate, a country that has given you people a lot of the things that you have, that has created millionaires and billionaires, and now you want the country to just like go down, belly up. It's shameful. It is really shameful. And what I see right now is not the America that I want to be a part of. It's not the America that our forefathers wanted. It's not the America that we want our children to have.
And some of it is so ignorant, Rob. Did you see that in San Francisco, they're taking Abraham Lincoln's name off of schools? This is Abraham Lincoln we're talking about, the emancipator.
Well, next it's going to be Martin Luther King, because they're going to say that he was a womanizer.
But it's so ignorant. What do they not know what Lincoln did, or is it just that they want to erase? I mean, this is spreading way beyond. This is the opposite of the Confederacy. I honestly, sincerely am asking, what is the thought process? Is there any rational thought? Is it just that people don't learn what Abraham Lincoln did, and anyone who's
kick them when they're down. You kick
needs to
them
be
when they're down. You kick them when they can't think about what's happening. You kick them when all this other stuff is being fed to them before anyone can stop and be rational and say, wait a minute, we're going too far. We're trying to just like clean up history, but history is dirty. History isn't pretty. That's the reason why it's history. Yeah, there are some light spots in history, but it's part of our history, and trying to erase it. Like I said, it goes back to this whole thing with the Capitol. You had people the spring and summer of 2020 wanted to burn everything down. And then on January 6th, everything became so sacred and hollow. During the inauguration, people were, oh, we love the song that Lady Gaga was singing. We love the American flag. These are the same people who want to burn down the flag, who they don't like the Star Spangled Banner. But then on that day, they decided to embrace it. These are hypocrites. And if you were to go to someone on the other side and say, wait a minute, we didn't know that you liked the Star Spangled Banner. We didn't know you liked the American flag. All this time you hated it. You were spitting on it. You were burning it in the streets during the spring and summer. So how did it become so holy and hallowed now? They couldn't tell you. They'll just say, oh, what are you talking about? What I saw on January 6th, I was crying. It made me cry. Well, I wanted to cry during the spring and summer of 2020 when I saw businesses being destroyed. Black businesses, white businesses. I wanted to cry then.
Yeah.
And even now in Seattle, I'm not just going to cherry pick. I'm going to look at it all and say, wait a minute, we are better than this.
It's a power grab. I look at this stuff as like, you get away with this, and then you get away with this, and they're just like making shit up now, and they're just going to make more and more up and see, if I say jump, you say how high, you don't say no, and also, if you think about it, right, there's like a realignment in society of like people having stuff or getting stuff or winning. We're talking about before, like, oh, I didn't win, instead of saying I lost, that's rigged. Also, like we're creating a society where people are playing victim all the time.
Yep.
So we're not America of, we're winners, right? We're a meritocracy. It's like, you don't have a diverse enough group of people or board. Like, well, but what does that mean? How many, men or women or what? Like, we don't know. There's no formula, and we we're paying people to like make up a report or do something, and it could be like McKinsey or one of these big consulting firms paying them millions of dollars, and it just makes stuff up. And then we're assuming like that's absolutely the right way to go, and then that's diverse. And the point is maybe that's not diverse, maybe it is. Someone's just making it up, but we're so afraid to challenge it. We just all become followers, and and if you dissent, then you're a racist. If you dissent, then you don't believe in diversity. And the point is so say we have a board and we have 5 women and 3 men. Is that diverse, or should it be 3? I don't even know what the numbers are. What are they representative of? And again, it's just kind of stuff that people come up with.
It's
I call the memo, and like everybody gets the memo and goes with the memo. It's kind of like, when you go to a place and you see people dressed the same way, and I'm like, oh, I didn't get the memo. Why did I like dress like, like everybody got the memo somehow. Somebody made stuff up, and people just go along with a conformist society. And if you challenge it, even just challenging from an intellectual perspective and saying like, I don't get it, respectfully, like I disagree. Oh my God, you're like shut down right away. And then that stymies thought, and that stymies debate, and then you can't teach people to learn because you don't learn the other side of the argument because you're afraid to disagree. Because if you disagree, you're some kind of an ist. You're a racist, misogynist, whatever, and then you don't want to be labeled like that. My God, because then you're cancel culture. So it's tragic, because I love to have debates with people that I don't agree with. Right. I like to debate with people that disagree with me and have a rational debate. And at the end, we hug it out. We agree to disagree, or they convince me or I convince them or whatever. But it's so polarizing right now that I'm afraid to even have discussions with people, because immediately things could be perceived differently or twisted in a different way. And then, everybody feels uncomfortable. So people actually just sit there and they just like nod their head like, yep. Nobody wants to say anything. They're afraid. That sucks. That's a problem for our society. That's a problem for our youth, because we're not able to kind of disagree with each other without being haters. And there's a big lane between me disagreeing and me being a hater. There's no connection whatsoever. But
Right.
now, if you disagree with the memo, then you're a bad person. And if you supported Trump, then you're a terrible person.
Yeah, it's just a different mindset than what we used to have as a country. Another wrestling analogy, but even if you look back at the 80s, you'd have like the patriotic American, like Hulk Hogan. He was the big fan favorite. And then he would go up against like the Russian Nikita Koloff or
Iron Sheik
or something like that. And Hulk Hogan was the patriotic American that the fans loved. And they never asked if he was a Republican or a Democrat or any of this crap that we have to deal with now. It's just feels like it's a completely different mindset.
And we knew the Iron Sheik was bad. It wasn't like, we weren't sure he was. I mean, sometimes, the bad guy became the good guy. That made wrestling interesting. But, when a good guy became the bad guy. But kind of like Hulk Hogan was a good guy. The Russian guy was the bad guy. And it wasn't like we were haters of all Russians. In that moment, that character played by that Russian guy was a bad guy. And we weren't a hater. Like it just things have just moved into kind of very binary. Like you either agree with me or you're a hater. Which means, okay, boss, I agree with you, because I know that if I disagree with you, I'm worried about. I mean, to me, the worst thing in life is to be branded to be some kind of hater, right? Because it will hurt you in your job, it'll hurt you in your career, it'll hurt you in the community. I mean, you couldn't even be on the PTA. People would just, not want to deal with you. So, they have that in their pocket, and they're just willing to throw that out no matter what. Like, if they can't get their way, there you go. Okay, you're right. Okay, it's like that's not a normal way of living.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to talk about real quick. Might make Manny's Yankee blood boil a little bit, but I'm really disappointed that the Baseball Hall of Fame continues to go downhill. Once again, not electing a surefire Hall of Famer, Curt Schilling, this time because of his politics, clearly. I've been a big baseball fan all my life. Yeah, Curt Schilling's easily one of the top 5 or 10 baseball players of my lifetime. But even setting him aside, the Hall of Fame has just turned into a complete joke. You've got guys like Barry Bonds, who's arguably the greatest baseball player of all time, not in the Hall of Fame. Roger Clemens, arguably the greatest pitcher of all time, not in the Hall of Fame. And I understand that people say, oh, they were on steroids, but who do you think they were playing against? They were playing against guys that were also on steroids.
They might not been caught like Mike Piazza, right? I mean, supposedly he took steroids, he's in.
Exactly. You just look at Curt Schilling's case. Mike Mussina just got inducted last year, and you look at their numbers, and they're very similar. But Curt Schilling had a lot more big moments in his career. Of course, the bloody sock game, which was huge at the time. I mean, that is an American. Everybody remembered when that happened. The Curt Schilling pitching with his bloody sock. Winning the first World Series for the Red Sox in over 100 years. He's a surefire Hall of Famer, and I really hope he gets in. And
it's said. I agree. Even though it's Red Sox, I like Curt Schilling. He's a fantastic player, and we've kind of, as a society, we kind of don't let drugs interfere with people getting jobs. We have expungements of drug records or something, but for some reason in baseball, I mean, even Pete Rose, I mean, what did Pete Rose do that was so bad? I mean, you're telling me athletes right now might not use FanDuel or DraftKings? How do we know? And, supposedly Pete Rose never bet against his team. Like he said, he never threw a game, but like he's one of the best baseball players of all time. Why isn't he in? Again, if we live in a society where we're allowing people to make mistakes, and we forgive them, why can't we allow athletes to make mistakes as well too? And Pete Rose, prime example, Curt Schilling, A-Rod, there's a lot of Barry Bonds. I mean, tremendous athletes. I mean, you try to hit a home run or break the record, even with steroids. You know how hard it is to do. I mean, you're ignoring the fact of his dedication. Barry Bonds, I'm a big fan of his dedication to the game. And how hard it is to travel, and he got older and he got hurt and he kept playing. Taking the roids doesn't affect the hand-eye coordination like the A-Rod. A-Rod's a tremendous athlete, and he had a lot of conditioning. Maybe the steroids, helped him get through some pain, or maybe made him a little bit more muscular. But I think all athletes take performance-enhancing drugs, and I agree. And with Schilling, I mean, he's clearly cancel cultured. The guy's a great guy. And really is a tremendous baseball player. But, again, it's become politicized. It's terrible.
And in Schilling's case, he was one of the most adamant guy to call out steroid users. I mean, he is just absolutely.
He went after Erod and stuff. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, but he's kind of he supported Trump and he's Republican and and you can't express. Maybe he should just pretend to be a Democrat at least to get in. Like say, look, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I
he would have to do it. Right.
I see where I went wrong, and then get in, and then say, I punked you, like I lied. It's all good. I mean, I'm a Republican.
Right, because you have some representatives that are saying that. I think it was even Mitt Romney who even said that the Republicans need to come out and say that Joe Biden is a president. They need to come out and they need to say it. They need to say that Trump lost. So you have a lot of people like this guy, Kurt Schilling. Maybe he would have come out and say, "Oh, I erred in my judgment," blah 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 blah, and they would accept him. But it shouldn't be that way. That is so wrong.
It's also like it's not enough for them that they won, and it's not enough that there are some legitimate questions about this election. They want everyone to say, "You won. There is no question about anything. We will never even entertain any discussion about the possibility that there could have been election improprieties. Joe Biden won with 100% fairness and certainty.
He's the smartest man.
Donald Trump will be impeached even though he's no longer in office, and disgraced and humiliated and prevented from ever running." I mean, it's like dealing with someone that wants every single thing their way to the nth degree. It's like if you were in a negotiation or any kind of relationship with someone, it's like the most basic principle that you need to understand and make space for the other person's point of view. And I've said this all along about the left, the hard left in this country, which has dominated the Democratic Party now. It's like a lot of these people are very into modern ideas and principles of psychology and self-help and yoga. But the most basic sort of point to a lot of those philosophies is you make space for other views, and the other person has their point of view and you have your point of view. And it's so elementary. It's like there's no relationship possible without that, and yet that seems to be just anathema to the hard left. There's no more acknowledgement of anyone else's point of view in any way. It's like totally 1,000% their way. And I don't think that of all Democrats, but I think the hard left, they've taken over in a lot of ways. They're dominating, and the other Democrats are allowing it. And it just, look no further to give one example. They punched Ted Wheeler in the face the other day. He's a mayor who, respected their views and allowed, for their protests and has been sympathetic. They hit him in the face. They don't even have tolerance for people who are on their side. This is a radical generation of young people that has been brainwashed, I guess. I don't know what to say. When I saw they're scrubbing Abraham Lincoln, I'm sorry, but the level of ignorance is beyond anything that I even know how to address, honestly.
Well, as Dianne Feinstein said, the dogma lives loud within them.
Yep. I want to leave you with this, and I know we run over this. It was really great. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed this. So this is from New York Magazine about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Somebody actually just sent me this. In November, Marjorie Taylor Greene became the first open QAnon supporter to be elected to Congress. Over the years, Greene has openly embraced and spread the kind of gruesome and hateful conspiracy theories that might once have relegated her to the sidelines of the national discourse, She advanced baseless claims about voter fraud during the 2020 election, has referred to multiple mass shootings as false flag operations, has shared her racist, Islamophobic, and anti-Semitic views online, and has shown support on Facebook for executing prominent Democratic politicians. I can't say any more to that. That kind of sums up everything we said. She's Republican, and in that paragraph, it kind of summarizes the 2 hours that we just covered.
And what else? Right. And here's the thing that's the opposite of it. Cori Bush, a BLM activist, has been elected, and she has been on the House pontificating and spewing a lot of hate. And I think there are two others from the Black Lives Movement that are there. I think there's one woman in Seattle who's there. So, but of course, no one will say anything. They will get a pass. But for Marjorie Taylor Greene,
she's in trouble.
She's in trouble. Well, guys, this has been a great discussion. I really enjoyed this, and I think we needed to have it. And I hope that people will share this like the heck out of it on the internet. I'm going to definitely try to put it up on a lot of more platforms. Hopefully someone will put it up on Twitter. But this was a great conversation because I think these are the conversations that we need to have. And we don't all agree on the same thing, but we bring a different perspective to the table. And we're able to have these conversations in an intelligent and civil way, which is very important, I think, giving the discourse in today's society. So, Andrew, you have any closing remarks?
No, just thanks everyone for tuning in, and be sure to check us out on YouTube, DLive, Facebook, or pill.net, and be sure to follow Manny and Heather on Twitter, Manny_Alejandro, and Heather is HE_Robinson to follow her on Twitter. And
Yes.
Follow Rob and I on Gab and pill.net and Cloud, at Small Town Andrew and at robjh1 on those platforms.
Yes, thank you all. Have a safe night. God bless, and we will do it again. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.